Okay, hi everybody, and welcome to our podcast. I am Dr. Nelson Moses. I am a speech language clinician and an educator. Clinician for almost 55 years, educator for 45 or so, higher education basically. My colleague and co host, Kimberly Osam, is catching up on personal and professional obligations after some significant time devoted to helping her son deal with a medical issue. If you take a look at our last podcast, you'll get the full story. I'm on my own. However, I have a guest on hand who I am very anxious for you all to meet, Elina Tretyak, a speech language clinician and former student of mine, now an SLC influencer on Tik Tok. She's a colleague who is trying to help me be an influencer right here on YouTube. Good luck, Elina. This podcast is entitled Being a Speech Language Clinician, Things to Know, Things to be Puzzled About, and Stories that Need to be Told. That pretty much sums up what this podcast is about. Among the things to know and be puzzled about is the process of language, which stands as foundational to our profession. Language, however, is ill understood. This podcast is dedicated to advancing the recognition that the term language should be understood not as a thing in a grammar book that others have to teach us, but as an action to language or languaging. The process that we humans have for coding, that is representing content of mind. And by content of mind, I mean our ideas, intents, and emotions, expressed in real-time streams of consciousness. This is a universal process. It's what I'm doing right this very minute as I ramble on and ramble on. Speech is the typical output of languaging, but there are many others. When verbal speech is not an option, or when one prefers to employ another code. Art, music, technology, literature, etc. We are also dedicated here to learning from people who receive our services and in diversifying the field's professional practitioners to reflect the diversity of languaging based on cultural, linguistic, gender, and neurological issues. Diversity is the norm for our species. Kimberly and I also wish to use this podcast to give voice to the young SLCs who are making real contributions to our profession. Toward that end, I have a guest today, Elina Tretyak, again, a clinician who is sensitive to diversity and understands the construct of languaging, and who is doing some interesting, fun, and informative things online. So join us right now. Again, hi everybody, and let me introduce my guest. Again, I'm so excited. Elina Tretyak. Elina's going to introduce herself since I've kind of done a quasi introduction a couple of seconds ago. Elina, it's all yours.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it's really special to be back speaking to you in this way, specifically on your podcast, because I started off as your student and now we're having this conversation as colleagues. So to me, it's really bittersweet. But my name is Elina Tretyak. I am a speech language clinician in the New York City Department of Education. I have my bilingual extension in Russian, and I primarily work with middle school and high school students. So my therapy primarily focuses on a lot of functional communication, executive functioning skills. We work a lot on languaging, social communication skills, and my goal really is to help students build the skills that they actually use as they transition into adulthood and after leaving college. But outside of my clinical work, so working in the school, I started creating educational content on TikTok for speech language clinicians and graduate students and anyone that may be potentially interested in the field. So, what really started off as simply sharing ideas such as like a day in the life, or maybe a resource binder or an assessment binder, um, kind of grew into a really supportive community where we learn from each other, and hopefully I'm using the platform to make the profession a little bit more visible and approachable. I had no idea that anyone would even would watch my videos. So it's amazing to me. I met a lot of people from different states, from different countries, and it's really special and I enjoy it. I enjoy editing, I enjoy filming, and I enjoy connecting with others.
Speech therapy is not only about how clearly someone speaks, but how effectively they communicate and function in the world around them. Speech refers to how we say sounds and words to the actual production, articulation, voice, and fluency. Language refers to the systems we use to understand, process, and express ideas, including vocabulary, grammar, social communication, and functional communication. In a high school setting, many therapy goals focus on language because students are preparing for post-secondary environments such as employment and independent living. So when you see activities like job applications, budgeting tasks, or addressing an envelope, it's not simply life skills. I'm targeting critical language abilities such as reading comprehension, written expression, sequencing, problem solving, attention to detail, and understanding real-world communication demands.
Yes, I really love Alina's TikTok stuff. Ha- there's some controversy out there, by the way. That quick cut approach to TikTok and taking Alina's, you may have seen me with Elina on TikTok where you interviewed me and edited that down to a couple of minutes. How do you feel about that? I'm assuming you're into it, that format. I think we're going to do a podcast on that because there is some controversy about the TikTok fast cut approach to video and people who use it and et cetera, et cetera. Just your
I am here with a SLP legend.
But the legend thing, but an old SLP, yes, I am a speech language clinician. I'm Dr. Nelson Moses, by the way. I spent most of my time at Long Island University Brooklyn campus, founding the graduate program and chairing it for a while. I have a podcast too, and it is called Being a Speech Language Clinician, Things to Know, Things to be Puzzled About, and Stories that Need to Be Told. I do that with my colleague, Kimberly Osam.
I will have your podcast linked here up in the video so you guys can go check it out yourselves. Today we're going to be doing a type of segment called Fact, Myth, or It Depends.
Everything depends, to be honest with you.
Are you ready?
I will.
Okay, this one I love. Bilingualism causes speech delays.
Absolutely not. The opposite, that's what I say. That's false. Research shows that it really facilitates all kinds of things, especially metalinguistics and executive function and stuff.
Speech and language skills affect reading success.
Reading is built on speech and language, both in terms of the stuff in writing is the same language that you're speaking typically if you're reading it. And when you're reading it, you're speaking either to yourself or to somebody else. Therefore, they relate. I would say true.
Screen time causes language delays. Hence,
It's a myth, I'd say. Screen time causes language delays. I don't buy into that, of course.
so if kids who talk late, will they eventually catch up without any kind of intervention?
As they say, it depends.
Language disorders are often affect academic performance.
I'm having reactions these days to the word disorders, but okay. But people with language issues, yes, because most teachers teach by talking. And therefore, if you're having a language problem and someone's trying to teach you stuff just by talking, you will have academic issues.
Speech therapy sessions mostly look like playing games. Fact, myth, or it depends.
If people are having fun, I'm for that. It should be that. Although it's not simply playing games, it's following a plan. And it's quite, if it's good speech language intervention, it is systematic, well planned, based on evidence, research evidence, and also based on a reading of the client you're working with, because you must reflect that client in your work.
And last one, something you love talking about. Correcting a child's grammar helps them learn language faster.
No.
So that is?
That is false.
Why so?
Well, this whole business, well, what exactly do you mean correcting? Say it this way, or
Yes.
my way is or the highway type thing? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of variation in grammar. Grammar exists for one thing and one thing only, to express ideas, quite frankly. Ideas, emotions, intent. That's what it's all about. And grammar is affected by culture and all kinds of things. And also, how many people like to be corrected constantly when you're trying to express your ideas? That would be stressful. So it would be just extremely counterproductive.
How does your brain feel right now? Did I pick at your brain a little bit?
No, that was enjoyable.
Okay.
Thank you. I always like exercising my brain.
You know why we need to exercise our brains?
What's left of it, that's why. We want a lot to be left of it at my age.
Why do we need to practice, right? If you don't,
every single thing is
if you don't use it,
you lose it.
You lose it.
Yeah.
There you.
Your opinion on this, briefly, maybe, and we'll
Yeah,
go
of
on to
course.
this. That'll become, I think, another one of these podcasts. I think Kimberly has some things to say about that, by the way. Go ahead.
So I love editing,
Yeah.
and I've noticed people like shorter clips that are quick, one after another, with different kind of information. And well, TikTok is very interesting because the algorithm is personalized. So it throws out what you watch for 2, 3 seconds and you'll get the same videos. But the short clips, I've noticed, keep people engaged for longer times. It's kind of like it like boosts your attention for such a short amount of time, and a lot of people have trouble saying sustaining attention for long periods of time. A lot of people like the short clips. People make cooking videos, working on things around the house, mechanics. They like the clip, 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 clip.
Right. Some people would say, well, maintaining it's the short clip thing, the quick editing, which not only is seen on TikTok, but really when I was back in the day, I was your age, TV shows and stuff like that, each scene was a particular period of time, which was way longer than scenes are today. So the quick editing is applied to, well, music videos, I think may have done it and introduced that initially. I'm not sure. Back in the 1980s or something like that, when MTV came on.
Editing and
But
videos
some
have,
people think that, well, the kids who watch this, or people who watch this, the quick
also
clipping cuts down the ability to maintain attention. Right now we're doing long form with me, and
right.
besides the fact, well, I'm here and people have to deal with that, looking at me for a long time, which may be an issue. But
Also, from the
I don't
people
know.
that watch my videos, it's they like it because the videos that I make, they get to the point pretty quickly. So instead of spending like 10 seconds or maybe a minute introducing the topic, you deliver the value of what you're sharing immediately. So
Right,
people like that.
right. Yeah, it really gets to the point and gets a lot of information in a short period of time. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Well, we'll have a longer conversation, I think, about this, because I think it's a really interesting topic, and I think it's relevant to being an SLC, because speech language person, because we're often working. By the way, on one of the major goals in speech language intervention is increasing attention span. By the way, do you work on that at all? I'm interested in how you apply the idea of languaging and how you work, what drives you, what ideas, techniques, etc., drive
So,
you, or that you're working with reference to as a clinician in a high school setting.
right. So I feel like working with the older students, I do have experience with the younger students, so early intervention and elementary school. And I was fortunate enough to work in a traumatic brain injury clinic when I was in LIU. So I had the ability to work and the opportunity to work with individuals that suffer from brain injury that resulted in different types of speech and language difficulties. So honestly, what really drives me as a speech language clinician is really the opportunity that I have to help people not only feel heard, be for people to be able to be understood and to be connected. To me, that's so important, and communication affects every part of a person's life, from learning to building relationships to advocating for themselves, and for participating really meaningfully in the community and with others. So seeing my students, my clients, their progress, even so small, to me that's so motivating can it be because it can be life-changing for an individual and especially their family members.
How is your another question? How is your has your perspective shifted from the time you began working in the field professionally after graduation to this particular point?
Mhm.
And that picks up even on from a longer time span. How did your perspective shift from the time you started majoring in the field, then went out to the to work professionally to this day, and all the work you're doing? You're ending up actually teaching through TikTok and through your video work. So you're an educator as well, in a way. Just to say, when I started out, and I tell the story, I think I told the story earlier on one of these podcasts, and I tell it all the time. I was the worst of the worst. So I came out to a place called Willowbrook State School with people with developmental disabilities, quote unquote disability, to fix people. That's what I was doing, fixing people, carrying a test called the what the heck was it? The it was an information processing test that had like memory stuff to do. Speaking of attention span, memory stuff, word retrieval stuff, and things like that. And I was fixing people. They fixed me. That's the point. So my perspective shifted radically, and thus my career. In any event, I ask you, where
That's
where were you at?
Well, that's such a great question as somebody that didn't I didn't even know what speech language pathology was. I went into school pursuing pharmacy because that was something my parents pushed me to do. I worked in a pharmacy, so I was kind of in a different field. But I was working in a pharmacy and I was in the classes in LIU and I was failing terribly. It wasn't something I enjoyed. It wasn't something I liked. My perspective really changed, well, for one, when I was exposed to the field because my grandmother, had dementia. So her cognitive state deteriorated, and she lost something so valuable that people take for granted, like a conversation that you and I are both having. So when she started losing her communication and she was in the hospital, that's when I was exposed to the field. I found the field from losing someone so dear to me. She lived with my parents and I, and she raised me. So I think that's first thing I have to share. And then when I started, when I knew I wanted to do something to help others. I had experience with kids, but I wanted to do something more meaningful. So when she passed, well, before she passed, I started taking post-bac classes and I loved it. I loved everything about linguistics. I loved everything about language development, language acquisition. And when I took those classes, it was just so natural to me. It was easy. I loved it and I did so well in my classes. So when I entered the program, or I mean, right before the program, I didn't know what to expect. I had a really open mind, but I really think I viewed it mostly as through a lens of we're doing assessments and we're it's intervention. But over time, since I've been in grad school, I finished my clinical fellowship and I'm working already for 4 years. I've realized so much that our role is so much more broader. We advocate for people, we educate, we collaborate with families and teachers, and what's most important is that we empower people to communicate in ways that are really meaningful, not for us, but for them. And communication and languaging isn't simply just producing correct language as people think or people say, right? It's also connecting with other people, it's identity. So over the course of the past 6 years and through the events that I faced and the experiencing school and experiencing working, my perspective has made a completely 360. Um, hopefully I answered your question.
Well, when you say 360, so what was the shift in a nutshell? And you're good on the nutshells. So that shift was from what to what, do you think?
From not even knowing anything about the field,
Yeah.
having no idea, not even thinking about where language comes from. How is it in our heads? What are we even thinking? How
Hmm.
has it even developed? Not even being able to acknowledge this role or how speech and language difficulties impacts the overall human, and witnessing different kinds of, injuries that treat a person, some injuries had that have affected a person to being able to work on helping an individual, connecting them, finding their identity, finding their voice. To me, I think it's a complete different perspective.
Yeah, because well, when I started out, the idea of somebody's voice, and I don't mean necessarily verbal voice, because people have all kinds of ways to express ultimately what's in their mind. But like you said, it's what that people have stuff in their mind, even people who may not be speaking or may not be verbal, or people who as you may know, I'm not a fan of the term pathology. Disability and disorder is suspect terms as well. Because any way you cut it, people have stuff going on in their minds, and it took my perspective shift initially was from fixing people without at all thinking about what was in their heads or what they were
Mhm.
personally interested in expressing. It was what I was interested in having, the exercises I was interested in having them do. And what happened in the long run was what happened in the long run. So there was that. Uh, Mike, by the way, and if do you have any suggestions for I've been doing several presentations recently, and we're actually working on a book that addresses in the opening, in introducing people to the field, in that first early speech introduction to speech language as a profession. What do you think ought to be
So
included?
I'm glad that you asked me this question
That's a
because
big thing. I think that's a big deal, big
as
part.
a service provider in the school, as a speech language clinician in the school, working with the older students, the high school students, um, my priority is building rapport, establishing a connection with them, building rapport, but I expose the students to the field as well. So what do I do when I expose them to the field? I make sure they know why they have speech to begin with. What are their goals? What are we trying to achieve in speech therapy? But I open up their lens to what my field is. And what do I mean by that? So, in the first week of meeting new students, I take different clips of individuals, so children, adults, adolescent, across the lifespan. I find videos from YouTube and I show them what a speech or a language challenge may look like. I first asked them, tell me what the difference is between speech and language. And you'd be surprised how many people don't know that. And you know what? I didn't know that either before got into the field. So I show them a visual of what speech or language may look like from different ages after being affected from some kind of challenge and area of need. And I asked the child, what's the difference between speech or language before I show them the videos? Then I show them one specific video. I show somebody with a global aphasia. So somebody that has challenges with word finding, with repetition, with just expressive language. And I asked the students, what do you see? Is there any speech? Is it intact? Does the person understand what they are hearing? Are they processing? Is speech intact? Or specifically, there's one video that somebody has with Wernicke's aphasia. The speech output is there, but the syntax, the order of the words are incorrect. So this child or the student that I see, they're able to connect what speech and what language really is, and that gives them a better meaning to it. So I expose my students specifically with the field by showing them some kind of visual of what it may look like to have a speech or language challenge. But you know what you can also do? You can do the same thing as what I do from TikTok. So one of the reasons I put the TikTok together was to introduce people to the field. So a day in the life video, right? Expect like clips of what I do. You can show people in a presentation. Busting myths. You can do segments like I did with you, Dr. Moses, fact or myth. Do something maybe interactive or engaging. Question the audience. Something I love being interactive and engaging, having dialogue, conversation. So maybe you can use some of those videos, some of those ideas when presenting.
Yeah, that's very interesting because you're working, first of all, you're referring to your work as a high school SLP, and I'm trying to get by the way, have proposed a high school level course on speech and language, and I wanted to do it actually up in the Bronx. Uh, it- we work with the University Heights High School. Shout out to that group. They're really very cool place. Very cool people up there. Helena Hawkshaw, who uh, is the supervisor up there at District 7, and Hazel Roseborough, the principal. Great people, great school. In any event, because and I want and the reason I feel that we should do a class which would one introduce people to speech and language because languaging is as human as it gets in a way. And it's amazing to me that we don't ask ourselves how our own minds work, what really is going on inside
What's going on
ourselves.
up in
We
here?
don't do that very
No.
much. You know,
What
we don't even, and how our bodies work. But I'm into the SL speech language is about the mind. And the most free, as I've mentioned on this series before, the person we speak to most frequently is us, our own
self?
selves. Yeah, a researcher that I'm into, as you I'm sure know, is Noam Chomsky, and he really makes the point that first of all, that language did strangely and audaciously enough did not evolve for purposes of communication primarily, strangely enough, but it evolved for purposes of thought to represent thought, and it's really most bottom line. First of all, spoken most to our own selves, and secondly, it's about reflection. You know, you're kind of like reflecting on stuff, thinking about stuff over the day, and doing that by, in a sense, talking to yourself. It blows my mind that you actually have to code your thoughts in order to talk to yourself, but everything is everything exists in your head primarily,
Right.
ultimately. it's represented. And of course, we do it in our minds in all kinds of possible ways. It doesn't have to be verbal, it could be visual or all kinds of different ways. That's number one. That blows my mind. So I thought that it would be, and the idea of streams of consciousness. I mean, then we externalize through speech or through some other means using an augmentative device, uh, art, music, etc. Uh, so then we externalize the parts that we want to externalize, but the rest of it, including that, is up in our heads. God knows I'm not going to let it. People aren't going to hear what goes on in my head without serious editing. The point is ultimately, I think this stuff shouldn't just be presented at university level. I think people in typical education should have some sense of their own selves. So what you're
Definitely.
saying is really great. And then this profession is really, I think we both think here. In fact, everybody I'm working with recognizes the specialness of it. And the specialness of it is that we are here to give, as you say, help others. That's the insight, the perspective shift, I think, bottom line, that should start in the first class. And that is the perspective shift is our job is ultimately to help people express what's on their minds. And what's on their minds is what drives the intervention itself, the assessment and intervention. In fact, everything we should do, we do.
That perspective shift, I think, is so great as growth in a clinician. I
Yeah.
can see if I didn't have that perspective change,
Yeah, you're,
I don't feel like I would have had the growth that I did, and I'm so happy that I changed the way I thought because of it.
yeah,
My
yeah,
thinking shifted.
yeah, me
The way
too.
I perceive things, which is beautiful, that I
Yeah,
didn't even think I was capable of.
right.
So,
It doesn't cross your mind until it then boom.
right,
And we go through, people talk about development ending around 18 years or something like that, teenage. Not true. It goes through your entire life. And just to say, so yeah, we're thinking about, well, what on the first course at the university level, what should be presented, but also if you're working, I like what you're saying that you before working with individuals, particularly at school age or and at high school level or even maybe middle to high school level, we should introduce them to what we do because we're going to be doing it with them and they should have some idea about what we do.
absolutely,
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
brilliant. That's great. Yeah. I'll steal your,
I
don't worry.
specifically,
I'm
I
into
also
stealing your material.
have a whole lesson on stroke, the difference between stroke and a heart attack with the
Yeah.
high schoolers because they need to know the signs and what they had when I showed them the videos of these people
Yeah.
that suffered from different kinds of aphasia, they were like, "Wow, Miss T, why is he like this? What's going on?
Yeah.
Why damage to certain parts of the brain can result in this?" These teenagers, Dr. Moses, let me tell you, I know they're all day on their phones and on the computers, but they are not introduced to any of these things.
Right.
And it's so unfortunate. I mean, as when I was in high school as well, I had no idea.
I did.
I'll be truthful.
Yeah, of course
So,
not. Who the heck? You know, none of us until we got into this area. But if you're not
right.
into this area until you have it in your family or you yourself experience it,
Right. So kids need to
who
be
the
exposed
heck
and
knows
more
about
awareness has to be spread to the younger
early
youth
on? That's right.
early on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful point. In fact, that's a highlight takeaway from this particular session we're doing. Thank you for that. Okay, great. Another question. I just wanted to us to go back to you and your cultural and linguistic history. Are you, I think I know that you're bilingual. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your history along the cultural and linguistic lines.
Yes, sure. So, as I said, I hold my bilingual extension in Russian. I was born in Ukraine and I came here when I was about 2. I was in ESL growing up. Well, now it's ENL, so English as a second language. And I would say English wasn't so it didn't come to me as quickly as my parents hoped. I struggled learning the language. I did. So as a Ukrainian American and being bilingual, so I speak Russian and English, primarily Russian in the home, I think growing up with both languages and cultures shaped how I am today, but also shaped the way I think about communication. And we advocate for bilingualism, especially with kids. And my parents thought that maybe being surrounded by both of the languages, I would be confused. But we know research shows that is false. That is false. Children are not confused. Bilingualism is actually very beneficial for the brain and development. So I do think that growing up with both languages and both cultures shaped the way I think about communication. Um, I firsthand experienced that language isn't simply, it's not simply just like people say, maybe vocabulary or grammar. I think language and languaging, as you speak about, is identity, it's family, it's culture, and like I've mentioned so many times, it's connection. And I think one of the reasons after being surrounded by both languages, that was another reason why I kind of gravitated toward the field as well. But being bilingual and being bilingual also made me really aware of the differences. The aware of the differences in communication aren't areas of need, or as some people may say, a deficit. I don't use that word either, but people do say that. And every student that I service or every individual that I see brings their own linguistic identity, linguistic and cultural experiences into therapy, which I love so very much. And those should always be respected and incorporated rather than overlooked in any of the sessions that we have with our students or our clients. So I think it's so special to me that I am bilingual. It's very meaningful to me. I talk about it all the time, and I'm so grateful that I was able to grow up, like I said, with 2 languages and 2 cultures.
Do you do two? Is it two languages? What about you? Ukrainian is a language too, or no?
Yes. So my
Are you
my
trilingual, in other words?
so I didn't pick up on Ukrainian.
Uh-huh.
My parents grew up in the Soviet Union before the collapse.
Right.
And they were forced to speak Russian. They were primarily speaking Russian and Ukrainian as well. They're both fluent in Ukrainian, but we came to America and they just spoke Russian. Television was only in Russian. And then when I went to high school, Ukrainian wasn't offered. I took Russian as a class. So I learned how
Uh,
to read and to write when I was in high school. So
uh-huh.
this was 14, 15, 16, 17, around those ages, I started learning and it to be honest, I took it because I wanted to be bilingual, and my parents pushed me as well. But when I was in grad school, I was not going to take the bilingual extension exam. I was not. My professors encouraged me to, including yourself, Dr. Moses.
Right.
Yourself and Maya said, take the exam. If you don't pass, it's okay. Take it. Try it. So I looked up the exam. I prepped a little bit. My mom prepped me. And if you want me to be honest with you, it wasn't as hard as I expected. Do I treat students in Russian? In the schools, no. Most of their mandates are in English. But when I was servicing students in a private practice, I did have two students that parents wanted only Russian.
Oh,
Only
really?
Russian, no English.
Wow.
He was, yeah, 3 years old.
Sure.
So I was doing therapy in Russian.
The point is that what languages, though, I know a lot of the kids at the DOE in New York are mandated for English intervention or assessment, but what languages are the kids exposed to or speak that you work with?
So most of my students are monolingual, but
Uh,
they come from very different cultural and linguistic and socioeconomic backgrounds. Predominantly, I don't have any lingual or English language learners that I service, but predominantly in my school we have mostly Spanish speaking. We have Haitian Creole.
mhm.
Those are the top two. Haitian Creole, Spanish speaking,
Uh,
Arabic.
uh,
Arabic is another one. Urdu, no Russian speaking. We actually had two Ukrainian migrants,
uh,
but they didn't receive any services. They didn't have IEPs. And my school has five schools. My campus has five schools,
yeah, yeah, I
and I
remember.
don't service one of the school that had the two students. So like I said, predominantly Spanish, Haitian Creole, Arabic, a little bit of Urdu. Um,
Right. Because I
yeah.
find a lot of time when you're assessing the kids, I do some assessments for DOE, and uh, the kids mandated for an English assessment, monolingual assessment. But when you speak to the child, you hear, well, but in the home, Spanish is spoken, or as you say, one language or another is spoken. Or when I speak to the parent, I notice the parent has a significant accent, and when I ask the parent, yeah, they
Right.
speak X, Y, or Z. So there's that influence on the kid, and it's
Or
no,
African American English.
yeah, and then dialect wise, if the child, everybody tends, interestingly enough, I find when people are in who speak other languages or dialects are in front of a professional of one sort or another, they're reading as a professional who is speaking a different language or dialect. They try to make adjustments to the dialect they're hearing. So they try to do more professional English, so to speak. But once they get relaxed, or they're speaking to their own family or something like that, they break into either dialect, you know, African American, or in my house, it's Caribbeans, since my wife and kids really know the Caribbean. Well, I hear Caribbean dialect a lot, Trinidadian, and although I can't do it, but they do it, but they do it amongst themselves in the family. And then in a professional setting, very interestingly, the shift there is to British English. So there's a British accent given that Trinidad and Tobago, they were English colonies at one point. They go with the shift to English, England, British English as the professional
Hmm.
dialect.
Definitely.
And I had one other question I think I'll ask you for this little session, and that is, so what have you learned from your students over time? I do think that I asked that question because it is, in fact, I've worked my profession primarily also with young children and school age, and it was thanks to them that I understood things, that my perspective shifted, and I recognize that I always have to pay attention to what my learner, my student, or client that I'm working with, what's going on in their minds. So And so they've taught me pretty much everything. I ask you, so what have you learned from your students that you want to maybe
Specifically,
make remarks on?
specifically like the population I service full time, like middle school or high school, or overall all the populations I've encountered. I'll just speak as a whole. This
Yeah.
probably is this may honestly be one of the strongest moments, the reflection of thinking about what my students taught me. I think about it all the time. My students and I
Hmm.
have such a great connection. That's my priority when I start seeing or servicing any kind of student is the rapport building. And I think that my students have taught me as much as I've taught them. So they've taught me more about patience, my ability of patience, the flexibility, my creativity. If you want me to be honest, a lot of my students encourage me to make the videos that I make on TikTok. So the creativity, the things that I do on social media is not easy and all of this tech stuff. So they push me to be a little bit more creative. They help me think outside of the box. And of course, they taught me humility, like thinking of the person as a whole, looking at my student not just as somebody that has an area of need and we need to help them. That's not it at all. Or like you were saying, fixing people. That's not what my purpose is at all. That's not in my head ever. And sometimes, the best therapy sessions that I have isn't aren't the ones that are planned perfectly. It's not the one where um it's not it doesn't go as planned. It kind of the ones that fall apart and just genuine conversations are my best sessions. And that kind of also reminded me about small victories, that small progress. Um, Progress isn't linear. Those Progress is not linear at all. So small moments like that show me and remind me about the growth, small about tremendous growth that can happen from small progress. But my students always help me reflect on myself, which I think is the highlight here. They taught me to step back and think about how I can improve, how I can grow, how can I reflect on myself. So that's really meaningful to me.
Right. I'm just picking up on your comment about creativity because I share that with you. Because as you know, I did one video here on making a magic box thing,
Right.
but my first job with DOE back in 1975 was was as a student. I always worked in the classroom with teachers and stuff, even back then. And I'd make quick. The kids taught me to make materials, so I just took from the kids things that kids are into, and also from the research, as I'm was a totally obsessive compulsive about Piaget's constructivism, which is foundational to my work professionally. Uh, and I would make materials, activities, and I didn't use the term languaging back in the day, but I definitely knew what was going on in the kids. The kids taught me that stuff was in fact going on in their heads, even if they were called delayed or they had one of these conditions like Down syndrome or cerebral palsy or whatever. It didn't matter. There were people and they were thinking and they had ideas and they I don't care if they said that people were saying they had no attention, they didn't engage with stuff. They do. You just have to watch. I learned. I had to look at the kids and they had and let them teach me what they were into, and then I'd create stuff, and that was the context in which I did the therapy. And I suggested
Absolutely.
to teachers that they do the academic stuff. So I
Mhm.
used to attach boxes to ceilings, and I put actual snow in the winter in the boxes, or little things, and the kids would go and pull them, and things would
Yeah.
fall on their heads, or depends on the kid, the age, what they were into, and from the kids who were early on developmentally to kids who are later developmentally or into music and rap and all kinds of stuff. Anything that there I brought into. So it, and as you know, in teaching at the university level, I've made a, I think I made a major point of that,
You were
that,
driven and motivated to get
yeah,
inside of the child's head, to
yeah,
somehow, in some way,
and
figure out what's
right.
going on in there so then you can work as a clinician.
Yeah.
Get
And also do research because I understood reality. I understood something about reality, that it's a function of how people think about stuff and everything. So that was everything. So just to say, uh, that's an important point. And this podcast and the book we're working on, and even the ones that I've done before, we have a number of them out, more or less, having to do with intervention planning and stuff. It's really about recognizing that at the end of the day, people are coming to us for service so that they can express what's on their minds, not what's on our minds or blah blah blah, but on their minds. And even when you're teaching, I don't care what I have to say, it's how people who are receiving it are talking to themselves about what I'm saying, which means, or somehow representing it to themselves, which ain't necessarily what I'm saying. Or no, it is what I'm saying, but not what's in my mind about what I'm saying. Blah, blah, blah. In any event, I really appreciate this time with you, uh, Elina. And
likewise. That was such a
and
rich.
and I always learn it from you. That's why I have you on here. But and from the we have a group of people that I'm very fortunate, very, very fortunate that one of the, at my age in particular, but one of the major, I'm trying to think of the term, benefits I've gotten from doing what I do is having relationships with you and with students that last beyond the classroom into us being colleagues. And therefore I can continue learning and continue being productive. So thanks
Like
so
I
much.
said when I introduced myself, it's such a privilege to be able, as a student that is now colleagues with her professors and supervisors, to me, that is so, I cherish it so much. I wanted to be the type of student that continues to hold a connection with these people because I've learned so much and I'm continuing to learn. I love being around all of you, and like you said, Dr. Moses, we're continuing to learn from each other every time we see each other. It's a privilege. Um, so that's why I said this is very meaningful to me having these conversations. And you interviewed me, but I learned so much more with your questions, with your responses. So I definitely wanted to ask you one last question. So you said, especially with your level of expertise and the length of the duration of years in the field. So 55 years?
So
Is there anything that still maybe surprises you about language to this?
yeah, surprises me. Everything. I can't get it. It's a mind blower. That's all I can say. Because it's not understood at all. It's not taught, again, language is languaging, period. So first of all, I shifted to that term a couple of years ago. So I'm 78 years old. So at the age of 76, I shifted terminology. I had the idea it was really fundamentally the idea that I've been promoting for a long time, that it's on, but it's about, that you can, you and I are doing it. We're just sitting here rambling on. So in real time, this is what I mean by real time, in stream of consciousness, gen generating, there's a term generativity that the language is, I have a t-shirt somewhere that's infinite, Chomsky's term, digital infinity. I put that on a t-shirt for a while. Digital infinity, it's infinity. You can say an infinite number of things, just ramble on, and in sentences, ideas in sentences that you may never have had before, or have had before but never expressed it this way. And then you think about it, and you keep development as a spiral thing, by the way. So just to say, everything about language, including now languaging and recognizing the stream of consciousness thing, that it's that, that just became more clarified to me.
I think we need to ask more people these types of
So everything, quite
everything.
frankly, blows my
And
mind, and that we haven't figured it out. So I can talk.
oh,
I keep talking about it. And well, it's an obsessive compulsive thing. Well, it is. Like it's probably the one source of my sanity, which has always been on shaky grounds.
one last question that I would like to ask before we go, because I would like to share this on my platform as well. So I have a lot of students or new grads, new speech language clinicians, and I want to ask, do you have any lessons or something you wish every new clinician truly understood before seeing a first client? Or a piece of advice you would give a grad student, somebody that just graduated and is going to start working, and it's the first session, they take the client into the therapy room. What is something you
Well,
can share?
people use the term establish rapport. You were using it.
Yeah.
That's therapy. There's no rapport and then therapy. It's just to connect, make a relationship with your client,
It's the foundation.
observe. By the way, I'm also obsessive about something that I call microanalysis, meaning just look carefully at the person you're talking to or interacting with, and pay attention to the little things. Or when a kid, if you're working with children and they're playing, look at the little things they're doing while they're playing, as opposed to just, as a clinician, you tend to focus on again, the activity you want the person to do and the behavior you're looking for them to express, and don't pay attention to what they're doing by them spontaneously, and their own, the ideas they're expressing, and the stuff they're doing that you don't expect, that people tend to label as non-functional or something. But always ask the question, what's the function of what the kid or
What is doing right?
adult or whomever you're working with is doing? What is the function? What are they trying to accomplish? Because everyone is trying to be competent. Everyone. And trying to accomplish something for themselves. The thing that very popular these days is, people are talking about, well, what is consciousness? The thing that'll never be answered is, what is intentionality? Intent, meaning what are how do you generate goals constantly? But you do. And that, in my opinion, will never be understood. Never. That's beyond. Because what the hell, how in the world are we able to just ramble on here where kids will immediately, I don't care who the kid is, I don't care at what level, something they're going to do. They're going to, and you may label what they're doing as weird or non-functional because it's not something you do or paid any attention to when your own kids did it or whatever, like lining things up that kids with autism are also notice that they do, or doing routine stuff repetitiously and stuff. People name these things as, perseveration or this. I took videos of my kids doing every one of these things. And the question is, my number one thing is, well, observe your clients, try to understand what they're thinking, and what's the function of things people are doing, and
That's
accept
really
it
great.
as competence, and
Right.
then move them, then join them, and then we're the professionals, yes, you have every right. Your responsibility is to move them in a direction that allows them to express themselves more easily or whatever it is. But
I have to add
that's what I say.
that's amazing. I think that's so helpful, informative, and it's very valuable information. And I have to add and end this by saying, since I was your student, I learned under you. You know what you really instilled in me, Dr. Moses? You
Yeah,
always
wonder.
about prioritizing connection because that's the foundation of therapy, and always presume
Yeah,
competence with your
presume
client.
confidence. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
that
book.
is forever gonna be engraved, and that's how I approach my students, my clients, what I prepare for them, the therapy that I have with them. That's always in my brain at all times. Presume that the student, the client is competent of
Try
achieving
something. Yeah, whatever they're
something.
trying need to.
That's it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
This was
thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Once again, thank you, Elina, for joining me here on this episode. Alina's off to Turkey, Greece, and beyond. So I'm a little bit jealous, but I'm here near New York. So what could be a better place to spend summer? In any event, I want to add that Kimberly and myself, with Elina, are planning to do a follow-up episode on social media, screen time, short form video, TikTok, Instagram type quick cutting, and influences these media forms are having on attention, reflection, engagement, etc. I think that would be a very interesting conversation, and we'll reconvene when Elina gets back. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Thank you again, Elina.